Hello, everyone. Inflation is no joke. Um, Literally, that's what I've heard many, many times when I was doing rideshare, and I'm sure that you all have probably said that yourselves, or you probably heard it. But I mean, at the time and even now, inflation is high, depending on your perspective. Because most things are about perspective. However, when I was doing rideshare, that topic came up a lot. And the thing is, I never initiated it, which was fine. Um, I picked up Susie from Whole Foods one time, and I was taking her to like a gathering. She jumps in the car. I speak. I say, "Hey, good afternoon, Susie. How's your day going?" She says, "Hey, it's going fine." So, I have my seatbelt on. I'm ready to roll. She has her seatbelt on, and like 3 minutes after I pulled off, she says, "Inflation is high, isn't it?" Now in my mind, I'm like, it sounded like a statement. And then the way her tone said it as if it was a question. So I just paused for a moment, and just as I was about to respond, she goes into her soliloquy. She goes on to say that these prices are crazy. Houses are extremely high. Everything is high. People are not going to be able to make it and not be able to live. So I'm just listening. Now, part of me wanted to cut her off, but that would have been untasteful and it would have been unprofessional. So I just continue to to her drive her to her family function. She goes on to say, I had to cut back on some things because she was married at the time. I mean, she should still be, but I haven't spoken to her since. I drove on beautiful day, that beautiful fall day. She was continuing saying that, talking about how her and her husband had a downsize from like a house to an apartment. She was speaking on how she had to cut back on the vacations. I'm driving and I'm listening. I'm like, and then she started blaming people. You know, she was blaming the presidents. She was blaming the current president and the prior president. So I'm just listening, just waiting for her to either get done talking so I could you know, gather my thoughts because she was just extremely, fast paced. Though she resided in Texas, she sounded like she was from up north from how fast she was talking. So I just continued to listen. And while she was going through her spiel, she would say, and part of me knew, but with my perspective, it never really bothered me because I already knew what the solution was. So I was like, yeah, I understand. As she was still talking, so she was like, "Can you believe this? Can you believe that? What are we going to do? What are people going to do?" And I'm thinking like, she's, she's entitled to her opinion, saying that inflation is no joke. But she's headed to a family function, and the address was in a wonderful suburb. Like when I say wonderful suburb, like gated community, security, um, just all the amenities one can hope for, no matter if you're a parent, kid, or a family member or a visitor, right? Nonetheless, inflation is still high, right? Well, it's no joke. So I just continued to drive, and now we're like 20 minutes in, and she's still going on about inflation. And then she started saying what some people still say today, which is, I'm going to leave the United States. And I was like, all right, I I suppose, you know. So she finally stops talking, and I'm like, okay, I'm almost to her destination because it was about a 35-minute drive. I'm like, I'm almost to her destination, and I want to keep it professional, but I can still give my opinion. So as I'm pondering on the idea, should I not? Because I know once I start talking, I can be long winded. I also know that my perspective is not usually everyone's else perspective. Plus, they can be all put by it, get an attitude, look at me like I'm the villain, which is fine because if one doesn't understand my perspective, they can be the villain in my eyes. But there's nothing wrong with the villain being a villain. That's a whole another video. But um, as I'm focusing on the road, trying to gather what am I going to say something or not, she says, "Well, don't you think inflation is no joke?" And I said, "I agree. Inflation is no joke. However, there's a solution to inflation." And I expounded that the solution is to make more money. Um, make more money, make more money, put in the work, be creative, network. Don't just be a consumer, try to create something to move it. And I could tell she was kind of getting agitated, you know, started, moving her head back and forth. But that didn't stop me. I just continued. I told her, I was like, hey, I once had the opinion that you had. And that opinion lasted for like 24 to 48 hours. And then I was like, after that, my mindset changed. So I'm not really concerned about inflation. Um, and then I knew she was getting mad. And the way I knew, guess how I knew? I knew because her skin tone started changing. Outside of her playing with her hair, that was the second giveaway. Her face started turning red. And then she says, reluctantly, you do have a point. You do have a point. I can't argue with none of those points. And then she goes on to tell me about how she would talk to her about, her and her husband would discuss it over dinner, and that her husband would just complain with her. Now, I wanted to say, well, that's an issue right there because no one was coming up with solutions. But, I didn't say that because she would have probably left me a horrible comment, which was well within her rights. But again, I want to be respectful. I want to be professional because, again, this woman's in my back seat. I don't know what she can do to me. I don't know what she have on her. And, you know, when inflation is no joke, when the client says that, and just before, I'm pulling into the cul-de-sac, and she was like, well, what made you start thinking like that? And why did it only last you for 24 to 48 hours? And I was like, well, I'm not married. I don't have a wife. Don't have a significant other. And I understand that it's just me. So since it's just me and no one is coming to save me, there's no one from DC is coming. The Avengers are not coming. So I got to make it happen. And, you know, She tipped me, and just before getting out the car, she was like, "Hey, thank you for your opinion, and I'm gonna run some of these things by my husband." And I was like, "Hey, no problem. Have a great time with the family, and don't drink too much," because I could tell she was gonna drink. I could just tell she had that look. Like, don't drink too much. She said, "I won't," and then I pulled off. But you know, inflation is no joke to most of the customers because I've heard it many times while I was doing ride share, and they always initiated it. But that's just the perspective they were seeing it from. They didn't see the other side of the coin, which is a solution, and that it may take some sacrifices, like downsizing from a house or apartment. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but hey, that's how the cookie crumbles. Because one can complain about inflation, but that ain't gonna put no money in their pocket. It's just not gonna do it. And yeah, that's just a negative mindset. And that's cool if that's what someone to dwell. I mean, but I think most people should just change their mindset on it and get to it and put in the work. You know? And until they do, then inflation will always be no joke. Um, this is all for today. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, go to Amazon and purchase my book. And that is all. Till tomorrow, you will have a good one. Later.